Hey guys, how's it going? So before I get into this video, I just wanted to say that a couple days ago I hit 1,000 subscribers, and this is awesome. This is really cool for me. It's a little goal that I set for myself, and I'm really happy to have achieved it. So for this video, I wanted it to be something extra special, so I'm creating a resin project from scratch. I'm going to be recreating the logo that I made for myself for my Etsy shop and YouTube channel in about January of this year when I started all of this. So that form is a crystal teardrop, and I'm going to be filling that with flowers, and I'm going to be trying a new material called Dichroic film. It's kind of like a holographic looking material, and I'm just learning how to use it. I'm going to try throwing that into this project and see what kind of accent it gives, and hopefully I like it. I don't know, trying something new. That's what growing is all about. So thank you for subscribing, thank you for watching, and I'm really grateful to have this platform and this space to talk and to document my process. Months and months ago, I decided to name my Etsy shop Clearwater Resin. This was because I grew up near this lake called Clearwater Lake, and I felt like that was the place that all of my interest in nature and collecting cool things and appreciating what the forest has to offer, I feel like that's where it all started. So I wanted to pay a little bit of tribute for that with my name. Today, I'm going to be going back to Clearwater Lake. I'm going to be reliving a childhood memory of collecting clay from the lake and sculpting my own sculpture from scratch, from just what the earth has to offer. This time, I'm going to create a mold of that and then turn it into a resin sculpture with dried flowers and the dichroic film that I mentioned. So I'm sure there will be challenges along the way, but let's just get right into it and take it as it comes. And a special thank you to everybody that has subscribed. If you like watching, please continue. It's fun for me and I want it to be fun for everybody. So leave comments, tell me what you like, and let me share my little life in this van with you. So I have my backpack all filled to go on a little swimming adventure. It's not gonna be the most fun, but it will be rewarding, let me tell you. We just gotta make it there. It's a little bit of a hike. But then what we're doing this for is precious clay from this lake. So I'm gonna go collect a little bag full, and then we're gonna get started on this resin project. About halfway there, and it is getting ominous out. Do you feel the omnicity? Okay, so I swear, like 30 minutes ago, it seemed like the most beautiful, perfect day. It was definitely the calm before the storm because it's getting stormy. Okay, so I made it here. This is a pretty ominous moment for doing some pretty peaceful chores. Sorry if the wind is awful, but we gotta get in this water and do the damn thing. I can't film that, but when you see me next, I'll have clay and we should be happy about it. And I won't be drowned by the lightning god. Okay, let's quit stalling and get in the water. Okay, we did that, and we got some, not that much. I didn't think to bring a shovel. You know, that's probably like a pretty simple 101 thing, but I did not bring a shovel. I just used my nails. I mean, hands work, I guess, kinda. First thing I do with the clay is separate all of the little stones and rocks and whatever else was stuck in the clay, and then dab out a little bit of the water just so it's not so sticky that it can actually be worked with. Then I model the clay into the general shape of a teardrop and add some guidelines for where I want to make deeper grooves to define the crystalline fractures of the teardrop. I just start out by making these rough lines that I will etch into further as the clay starts to dry. I'll admit that this clay was a little bit harder to use than just regular store-bought clay. I wasn't able to work on a lot of detail while it was at the softest state, but as it dries, it gets harder and I could etch into it further and really define the shape that I wanted. I'm already thinking about how this mold would be able to display flowers and whatever materials I decide to add into it. I want some decently sized flat areas so you can peek into a window of color, but I don't like to be so strict about the clarity of the resin pieces that I mold myself. I don't mind it having a little bit more texture than a silicone mold. I think this organic nature of it reflects that it was made by hand, and the unique ways that it manipulates the colors of the flowers inside of the resin is truly unique every time. So the next thing I do after the clay is hardened to prep it before I add the mold builder is I do a couple layers of nail polish. I found out that this kind of adds a smoother, shinier texture, which is kind of the goal in resin. It isn't always necessary since I always do top coats anyways, which adds that shine, but it definitely doesn't hurt. It also just seals in the clay and makes sure no little pieces come off while I use the mold builder on it. So to build a liquid latex mold, it takes me a few days of just covering the form that I sculpted in thin layers at first just to make sure it picks up all the details and creates no air bubbles, but then later on I do add thicker layers just to build up the mold itself. In total it was probably 6 or 7 layers of mold builder, and I waited for it to be fully dried before trying to peel it off the sculpture. Next, I get to start going through my flower collection, all of my mason jars with all of my different colors, and I pick out my favorite ones. Just a big assortment of colors because in my logo, I just use a bunch of different colors. Actually, fun fact, how I colored in my logo, I just had a picture of flowers and I blurred it out and just left that on the inside of my logo. So it's kind of authentic to this resin piece exactly. In my actual logo, I used the primary colors, and in this one, I'm just gonna have fun with it, use whatever flowers I think are prettiest. And I also go through my mushroom mason jar and pick out a few choice vibrant pieces from there as well. These mushrooms I had collected from the area around Clearwater Lake just a few weeks earlier. Next, I use some tinfoil to mimic the shape of the mold so I have a place to set the mold in while I work in it. This prevents it from being deformed, so this is how I've liked to work, and I thought it works really well. And then from all the flowers I selected, I narrow it down even further to as many as I could fit in there. Some green fern, some of these beautiful little flowers that I don't know the name of, but they're really nice. And I was apprehensive to add any of the holographic film in this first layer since I hadn't tried it out yet, so I decided to add on a second project to this video where I work on a half sphere just to test out what kind of effects we can get with this new material. So I start with chopping up a few little pieces just for the forefront of the piece, and then as the resin cures, as it hardens a little bit, I add more and more and space it out throughout the piece, hopefully giving it an extremely glittery and opulent look. So there were definitely some positives and negatives of working with the dichroic film. I really love the look of it. I love the seemingly limitless color palette within it. It shows yellow and red and green and purple and pink, just depends on the light that it's in, but then overall gives this silver looking opal effect. But I think there's a huge creativity aspect in using this material. It depends on how you cut it, how you work with it, and how you layer it within the resin to depend on how it's gonna look. This was just the first thing that I thought of, to cut it into strands, which I thought was kind of interesting, but maybe cutting out circles can create like a bubble looking effect, or just working with the material differently. I'm definitely gonna have to experiment a little bit more before I can actually get into it, but I just love the color, and color basically sells it for me all the time. Now after the first layer of material has cured, I can start working on the background and filling up the mold fully. So this is where I wanted to get kind of creative with my crystal teardrop and add in a lot of the dichroic film, because I think it started to look really nice in the other piece. Can't really tell until I pop these guys out, but I think it could make a really fun sparkly background that can shine through the flowers. So I got this holographic dichroic film off of Amazon for about $15. It came in a sheet of 17 inches by 78 inches, which is a lot more than I use in this video. I use a very small piece of what I had, so if I plan to use it for these smaller decorative little resin pieces, it could last me forever. But I'm hoping to think of a really big project that I can use this material with, because it looks really stunning in a full sheet. And I'll leave a link for this product on Amazon in the description if you guys want to check that out yourself. After cutting a variety of sizes and stirring it in and packing in as much as possible, I could leave it to sit for about 24 hours while it hardens fully. The reason that I picked to do a crystal teardrop for my logo and for this project is for actually kind of a lot of reasons. I relate to this like teardrop shape because it's something that I encounter with every time that I do resin. When I do top coats, I just like see it and I watch it dribble down, and I've seen a million different colors reflected in teardrops before, and the crystal part of it just represents the preservation and the organic nature of what I want my brand to be. And it also just fit in really well with the name Clear Water, since it's a water droplet. And a teardrop can also represent sensitivity, because I'm also a sensitive person. So it just seemed like a full circle, it clicked, and I liked it. So I'm always up for changing my symbol and my brand and defining it more in the future, but I thought this was a fun starting off point. As I peel the latex mold off of the resin, there's still this really sticky film of resin that isn't fully cured. This always happens when I use my own latex molds, not so much when I use silicone molds. Not sure what that's about, but it just needs some air to dry fully, and none of this texture remains on the resin piece. It evens out as it cures and leaves a glossy finish, but then I do plan to do a top coat on these pieces anyways to give it an even glossier finish. And then closing in on the final steps with these pieces, I snip off all of the excess residue from the top coat that I just added. I use a Dremel to sand down any of the sharp edges and just make sure everything is flat and seamless before I do one final top coat. I have these pliers that are great for snipping away any of the chunkier pieces of resin, which definitely saves some time sanding. Sanding resin pieces is probably my least favorite part of the entire process. It's a necessary step and it makes a huge difference at the end. It often surprises me when I get to the final product and be like, oh my god, the shape of this is so clean that it makes a big difference on how it displays whatever material. It always surprises me, but doing it is not the funnest. I don't like the dust and I don't like the mess, but I quickly get along with it, and the final step is to touch up any of those sanded spots with some clear nail polish, which works great to just make those disappear. In contrast with the last step, this is such a satisfying moment for me. This is the time that I really take to see what happened within these pieces. As I move the polish around, I can see how all the material landed, and I noticed it created a little bit of transparency around the shapes of the dichroic film, and I can see how the foreground and the background of the piece kind of interact, how the film glitters through and around the flowers, and I think of how I want to try to do it a little bit differently next time and have some of the film wrapping around the flowers on the sides and just poking through a little bit more. And here's the piece when it's fully dried. I'm in love with the composition of flowers within this. I love the intense dark rose in the middle and how the variegated parts of the petal turn to pink and then leach off into the smaller pink flower above it. I like the creeping fern on the side of the piece and the mushroom just straight in the middle. I wish it was positioned a little bit better, a little bit more clearly, and maybe added another mushroom. I think one got lost in there a little bit, but I'm really happy with how this one turned out. And then the half sphere of just the dichroic film is really pretty. It sparkles so much. It reflects light like crazy, and when the sun hits it just right, I can't stop looking at it. It's definitely something that I need to play with more. When it's just on my table, it kind of reflects whatever light is around it, but it gives off a really opulent, translucent, holographic, chromatic, supersonic, hypnotic, funky, fresh, silvery glow. It's definitely nice to do some personal art once in a while, especially when it's trying something new, but I have some really cool projects that I'm going to be working on in the next couple of videos. Some things that I also haven't tried before, but are commissions that I got from Etsy. So I'm gonna record that, and I can't wait to share that with you soon, as well as some travel videos of canoeing in Ontario and doing some downtown Toronto van life adventures as well. Winter is coming pretty quickly here in Canada, and I'm definitely gonna be coming to you with some how to stay warm in the van tips, I guess, because I'm definitely going through that right now. I'm learning a lot, and I have some things that I would like to share, and some last minute end of the year foraging collecting videos to make sure I have enough flowers and foliage for the coming months. So here's how the resin piece turned out. I really like the dichroic film on the back. I think it adds like a really cool, like subtle intrigue, like a sparkle. Like when it hits the sun, it's just so sparkly. It reflects really nicely. The lines for the crystal are pretty distinct. I went pretty deep in there. I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I can't wait to use more of these materials soon. I have a lot of things planned, and I'm really excited to get more into it. So, bye! So thank you to this lake and the earth and the forest for always inspiring these art projects and giving me the materials and tools that I need to execute them. Constantly being surprised and challenged and always finding something new.